Good morning, students. Today we look into and we start the new chapter, which is an imperial capital of Vijayanagar, 14th to 16th century. Now, students, as the name suggests, Vijayanagar or the city of victory was the name of both a city and an empire. The empire was founded in the 14th century. In its heyday, it stretched from the river Krishna in the north to the extreme south of the peninsula. In 1565, the city was sacked and subsequently deserted. Although it felt, guys, 1565 essentially what happened was the last ruler of the Vijayanagar Empire was Aliya Rama Raya, and because the Delhi Sultanate was surely it had captured north, east, and west, but the south was beyond their reach till then. Okay, and a lot of Delhi sultans had tried it, but never quite made it. Just apart from some occasional victories, but they were not able to, establish a stranglehold over the southern part of India. But for the first time, because of Vijayanagar Empire, and for the first time in 1565, that is, Aliya Rama Raya was the last ruler of, you can call the Hindu ruler of Vijayanagar, who was first captured and beheaded by the Mughals. Okay, so 1565, of course, at that point in time, Delhi was ruled, or India was ruled by Akbar. Okay, so the discovery in 15th, although it fell into ruins in 17th, 18th centuries, it lived in on the memories of people living in the Krishna Tungabhadra Doab. They remembered it as Hampi, a name derived from that of the local mother goddess Pampa Devi. These oral traditions, combined with archaeological finds, monuments, and inscriptions and other records, helped scholars to rediscover the Vijayanagar Empire. The discovery of Hampi. The ruins at Hampi were brought to light in 1800 by an engineer and antiquarian named Colonel Colin Mackenzie. Students, antiquarian is essentially someone who is very keen on anything that is very old. He wants to discover the roots of it. How it evolved and everything about it. That is someone who is an antiquarian, an employee of the English East India Company. He prepared the first survey map of the site. Much of the initial information he received was based on the memories of priests of Virupaksha temple and the shrine of her Pampadevi. Subsequently, from 1856, photographers began to record the monuments, which enabled scholars to study them. As early as 1836, epigraphists began collecting several dozen inscriptions found, guys, essentially people who study inscriptions, found in this and other temples at Hampi. In an effort to reconstruct the history of the city and the empire, historians collated information about these sources with accounts of foreign travelers and other literature written in Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, and Sanskrit. That is essentially about the literature was written. Students, I have in these language, students, I have always said in some chapter or the other, you know even if you remember in class 11, I used to tell you that for an empire, if you have to study an empire, and that's what the historians do, if they have to study an empire, if they have to study the king, of course, the accounts which have been detailed accounts which have been documented by the court historians, of course it is important, of course it is surely referred to, but one of the very important things which is done is you study, the historians always study what the contemporaries had to say about that particular, the neighboring states had to say about that particular ruler, or for that matter a particular kingdom, because a ruler, he can say he was ruling over whole of India, and an empire, or probably that kingdom, the court historians would say that their ruler was the best, the most benevolent, they were the richest one, they were the most powerful ones, they can write and document anything that they want. And that is why historians always study what the neighboring kingdoms had to say about it. Okay, and whether they agree that yes, they had the most, this particular kingdom had the most powerful army, or whether they agree that the ruler was actually one of the ones who was considered a military genius of those times, someone who was fierce, He was actually charismatic, and he was really powerful, strong, was amazing in sword fight, and was great with bows and arrows. If the enemies and the neighboring kingdoms agree, then that gets certified that yes, this guy must have been special, or this kingdom must have been powerful. And that is the reason, students, you have to understand, the Mongol Empire is considered to be, the biggest and the most brutal and the most efficient, or rather, the Mongol army was considered to be the most efficient military machines of all time, not because what Mongols had to say about themselves, not because what the Mongols had to claim about themselves, but because of the other court historians who have written right from Russia to Hungary to Baghdad to India, in China, what those historians have written about the Mongols, and when those things are collated, it's only then that the modern historians reach to a particular conclusion that yes, Genghis Khan indeed was the great Khan, or Kublai Khan was indeed the last most powerful Mongol Khan who ever was. And after Kublai Khan was gone, then everything kind of gradually started falling apart. So that is how the people study and determine things. Now, coming to Colin McKenzie here, born in 1754, Colin McKenzie became famous as an engineer, surveyor, and cartographer. Cartographer is guys essentially studies maps. In 1815, he was appointed the first Surveyor General of India, a post that he held till his death in 1821. That is, he held this post for about 6 years. Surveyor General of India. In fact, is not a position which came with the British and went with the British. Even today, India has Surveyor General of India. This post was surely started by the British in 1815, but like most of the things that we today, when we see India, it was started by the British. We can have plenty of complaints against them, but they've had a huge amount of contribution in making India as a modern India as we know it today, because Survey General of India is one of those posts which is there even today. And in fact, if you look at the list of the gentlemen and people who have been the Surveyor Generals of India, out of every five Surveyor General of India, you would find four of them have been military men. They would be the Major General, or Lieutenant General in Army, and it was there even during the British times. There are a lot of brigadiers and colonels who became the Surveyor General of India even during the British times till 1947. That is. Now he embarked on collecting local histories and surveying historic sites in order to better understand India's past and make governance of the colony easier. He says that it struggled long under the miseries of bad management before the South came under the benign influence of the British government. By studying Vijayanagar, Mackenzie believed that East India Company could gain much useful information on how many of these institutions, laws, and customs, whose influence still prevails among the various tribes of natives, forming the general mass of the population to this day. Students, one of the very important thing, that is Surveyor General of India. Of course, Colin McKenzie was the first one who did and who made enormous contribution. But the most famous is Surveyor General of India. If you can think of, and the moment I take his name, you would say yes, definitely you've heard of him. Was Sir George Everest, the gentleman who actually surveyed Mount Everest, and he was the one who, for the first time, determined the actual height of Mount Everest. Everyone knew that yes, there is a mountain, there is a mountain which the Tibetans call, I think, Chomolungma, and it's very tall, very high, it's majestic, it is bright, and all of that. But no one had there is none mountain as grand and as big and huge as that, but no one knew the actual height of it. No one had done the kind of survey, the kind of geographical investigation which which Sir George Everest did. And just to stay with this post, when Colin McKenzie till his death in 1821. So Everest became the Surveyor General of India in 1830. Okay, and if I can remember correctly, he held this position for about 12, 13 years. So must have retired around 1842 or 1843. Okay, so this painting, Mackenzie and his assistants, this is a copy of an unknown artist of an oil painting by the portrait painter Thomas Hickey. It dates to 1825 and belongs to the collection of the Royal Asiatic Society of Britain and Ireland. Since the rest of it you can go through, but Thomas Hickey, just a bit of about Thomas Hickey here. Students, the genuine paintings, the only Britisher who made the best paintings, or rather, who he was himself commissioned. Thomas Hickey was himself commissioned to do his paintings, and he is very famous for his paintings of the life paintings of someone whom he painted while that gentleman sat in front of him as a model was his family, his coverage of Tipu Sultan and his family. Tipu Sultan's earliest paintings have been done by Thomas Hickey. So do not forget this name ever, because he is very famous for his paintings of Tipu Sultan and his family and his cousins. If so that's what is kind of famous about him. Rayas, Nayaks, and Sultans, according to tradition and epigraphic evidence, two brothers Harihara and Bukka founded the Vijayanagar Empire in 1336. This empire included within its fluctuating frontiers people who spoke different languages and followed different religious traditions. On the northern frontier, the Vijayanagara kings, compared with contemporary rulers, uh, including the sultans of the Deccan and the Gajapati rulers of the Orissa, for control of the fertile river valleys and the resource generated by lucrative overseas trade. At the same time, interaction between these states led to the sharing of ideas, especially in the field of architecture. The rulers of Vijayanagara borrowed concepts and building techniques which they then developed further. So, essentially, this is trying to tell you that the Vijayanagar Empire, at least during the time of Raja Krishna Deva Raya, had very cordial relations with his neighbors, and of course, all of them learned from each other rather than just considering each other to be sworn enemies. What had to be learned, they did not spare that opportunity or did not let that opportunity go. So, and that is what it is, students. Thank you for today.